Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is ChannelVision editor Gerald Baldino here, and today we're going to be having a roundtable discussion with Telesystem, CNSG, MIcrocorp, and Ridge Innovative. The topic today will be decommoditizing your commission by selling managed solutions. Joining us today is CNSG EVP Randy Friedberg, MIcrocorp SD-WAN solution architect Chris Donlin, and Ridge Innovative President Nancy Ridge. And from Telesystem, we have EVP and Chief Business Development Officer Bruce Wirt and Channel Marketing Coordinator Micah Rosales-Peterson. At this point, I'd like to turn the webinar over to Bruce to begin. Bruce?
Well, thank you very much, Gerald, and it's awesome to be here. I guess when I say here, most of us haven't left our basements in quite a while. But I do want to start by talking about that. We got an all-star panel here. I just want to open it up by asking a little bit about everybody and a short story about how you're surviving the pandemic, how your business is operating, maybe how you've seen customers operating, and then whether or not you think we're ever going to go back to the way it was before. Let's start with Nancy. Nancy, I've known you for quite a long time. You were part of a large master agency, and then you kind of went off on your own. I saw your anniversary on LinkedIn. It's about 1 year ago. So tell us what you're doing now, and tell us all about how you're surviving.
Well, I like to think I'm thriving, not surviving. And one of the things that I have noticed as a result of the pandemic that really came to the forefront is a shift in how I'm interfacing not only with customers, but vendors and partners and everybody out there. And it really is starting more with a conversation, just like you're doing now. How are you doing? How are things in your home? You know, just being a human being in the conversation, because understanding that folks have so many dynamics in their lives now, I find that it really isn't very helpful to just dive right into my business agenda. So I'm seeking to be that human being first, and then from there we can look to see how can I be of service. And that part hasn't changed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this in a lot of ways has brought people closer together. It's so weird because we're all used to traveling, especially the people on the panel here. We've been bouncing around airplanes for probably as long as we've been in the business. And I haven't been on a plane in quite a long time. I put my Teams in Do Not Disturb, but it didn't listen to me apparently. I haven't been on a plane in quite a long time, and I'm doing so many virtual meetings. And we've even talked about just changing the way that our sales team operates. So we operate nationally, and part of the process involves sales engineering, and it kind of transitions me into Chris Donlin, who represents that area of the business for MIcrocorp, not just a sales engineer, but he has that process under his wing. And Chris, you know, in the old days, sales engineers were out on site getting their hands dirty. Do you see a lot of that now? And do you think that going into the future, we'll see a lot of that, or will it continue to be hybrid or maybe more virtual?
Yeah, like you, I was traveling a lot every other week, and now I never leave my house. So, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in South Florida. It's pretty hot. You don't want to leave the house. So anyway, but you know, virtually, this is, as much as I miss a whiteboard, I now have virtual whiteboards and electric whiteboards that I can use. So it hasn't really affected my ability or sales engineering's ability to resonate and communicate and help design. I think sales engineering is becoming much more critical as we move forward, especially because I'm under the belief that this technology community we live in holds the keys to businesses thriving going forward, because there is going to be a fundamental shift in where workers are. A lot of the technologies are fully baked, just not adopted in order to allow businesses to make that transition. So that's kind of where we come in, you know, and some of your folks who I know very well, and help bridge that gap between the partner, the agent, and that business to provide that technical expertise to give them the roadmap to how they can adapt in this new world.
Awesome. Randy Friedberg, longtime friend of mine from CNSG, now an AppSmart company. Randy, how's this pandemic changed what you're doing from a day-to-day basis?
Well, besides adding just a lot more alcohol to deal with everything, no, no, it's, I mean, the thing is, we're all in this together. I echo the exact same things that Nancy and Chris said. We're in this together. We're all figuring out how to operate in the new normal. But the way we look at it, there's never been a better time to shine as a trusted advisor for your customers, as a true consultant for your customers and partners for their customers, because we have a vested interest. Not only is it the right thing to do to help our customers survive and be able to make it operate in the new normal, but we all have a vested interest in making sure they do so. So again, this is the time where we can shine and we can help design and enable them to have the technology they need to in order to operate.
That term "new normal," I think I've heard that a gazillion times on TV and everywhere that that you can hear anything. Gerald, ChannelVision, real quick. I've seen a lot of communication from ChannelVision trying to help companies like Telesystem, helping master agencies through the pandemic by shifting some advertising dollars and shifting, doing things like this. You can't get out on the road, so we're doing things virtually. How has this affected ChannelVision as an entity and a marketing company?
Yeah, like everybody, we really miss getting out there and seeing everybody face to face. I think, especially during the recent Channel Partners virtual event, we're looking forward to getting back out there. Hopefully, once this is all behind us. In the meantime, we've really been ramping up our digital efforts here. We have a new podcast. We've been doing CVTV online, and certainly a lot of webinars. So going to just try and keep the content rolling and get through this as best we can and keep it positive.
So that's and that's awesome. And I think that's the theme here is we're all trying to adjust on the fly to what's happening in the world. And what we want to do today is not spend all of our time on the pandemic, but we want to take partners through this managed solution selling experience. We want to talk about the why and then the what and the how. My name's Bruce Wirt. I'm I have the longest title in telecom. I'm an executive vice president and the chief business development officer at Telesystem. So I have the front office at the executive levels, that's sales and marketing and the fun stuff, product development, the things that keep me excited. And also on my team, our channel marketing coordinator, and she's really making a name for herself lately. She's been parts of all sorts of panels, Micah Rosales-Peterson. And I just want you to pop on camera and say hello to everybody, Micah.
Hello, everybody. I am excited to be here and be part of this panel discussion. I think it's going to be fantastic and so much incredible information that you guys are going to get from this. If you guys have any questions or concerns, please leave them in the Q&A. I will be moderating them through to our panelists. So if you see me here just sitting here, I am not just sitting here. I will be moderating it. So please leave your questions.
She's watching for your questions. And let's make this dynamic. So if you have a question as we're going along, don't wait until the end when you're rushing off to the next meeting. Ask it right away and we'll try to work it in and inspire some other discussion that you create during this webinar. So let's get started and talk about why we like managed solutions. So Telesystem is a managed solutions provider. We operate nationally. I'll skip boring you with the long story, but we've made some strategic acquisitions. We've grown wonderfully organically across the country. We're quite a large company. We have some MSO assets out there. We own, as a larger organization, we own some television affiliates and a few newspapers. And Telesystem is our commercial telecom brand. And we're in the managed solutions business. So what we're doing is not just doing billing aggregation or selling one specific product to help businesses, but we try to take the best of breed of what's out there and then implement it and own the experience for the customer. So part of the panel here today, we've all worked together at some point doing that. I don't want to make this a Telesystem commercial. I want to make it more agnostic and really talk about business in general and this industry in general and how we can solve problems for the people watching, and there's quite a number of them, thank you all for jumping on. So let's start by talking about really the why. Why are we talking about managed solutions? And for me, and I'm the one on this panel that's on the service provider side of it. I know Randy has existed on my side as well. For us, the managed solutions can really help to mitigate the effect of write-downs. And write-downs on our revenue, on our bottom line revenue from an annualized standpoint. And then more importantly for the partner community, and that residual check is really a lot of times the paycheck for the partner. Write-downs are a killer. So I want to start with Randy, and being in the master agent business, also, at a high level on the provider side. Tell me about how you've seen a really bad experience where write-downs has just killed a partner business, and maybe they fell asleep at the wheel in the process.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, we had this discussion a couple of days ago where, I mean, you don't have to look that far back. I've been doing this since 1999. And when we first started, we were selling circuits and PRIs, and those PRIs had long distance on them. And a lot of times the long distance was as much as the PRIs. If you look at where we are today, their long distance is free. PRIs are pretty much non-existent. Well, that same kind of shift is happening. When you look at the traditional bandwidth and the voice services, it's a race down. You can get a lot of bandwidth for a small amount of money. So for us, our role is to help build and maintain a portfolio that enables our partners to succeed in capturing as much of their customers' IT spend as they can. So we build out this portfolio that allows them to do that. There's a million examples Nancy can say, and Chris and all of us on this panel could say, where you see partners, as you said, Bruce, fall asleep at the wheel, where they have this nice annuity that just mailbox money is coming in. But if you're not working to help utilize the relationships you have with your customers to continue to grow it, it's going to be a race to the bottom. And the longer you've been doing this, the quicker it gets to, can't outrun the churn monster, as we always say.
And Nancy, what do you say to that partner? So you were part of a large master agency at one point in time, and a lot of what master agents do for agents is they do some coaching and they do some consulting, and you're helping them grow their business. What do you say to the partner that comes to you and they say, well, I just want you to help me get the service provider to lower the bill, because the customer doesn't want anything new. They just want to lower their bill by 25%. What do you say to that partner? Do you give them any kind of coaching that they're also hurting themselves in that process and there might be more out there?
Well, absolutely. I think what I've always tried to do is expand the conversation beyond the negative or the obvious problem. There's always so much more to it. And it really begins with expanding that conversation beyond what the immediate issue is right in front of that customer. The customer may be asking for a reduction in cost because their business is struggling. And certainly now, we're all dealing with that, as many of our clients, and depending on the vertical, they may be shutting down branches or really struggling, and they look to us as their trusted advisors to help them. But rather than have a conversation about writing down existing business, what I like to do is invite people to have an optimization conversation instead. Get into the business discussion. Ask the customer kind of the similar question you asked starting this panel: how has this pandemic affected your business? And what outcomes are you seeking to achieve now that you're faced with some pretty rapid changes and things that are happening? And I always tout the idea of optimizing that IT spend, because we know that more and more of the customer budget is going to technology spend. We also know that there's a good chance that partner is talking to maybe their old contact who is an IT manager themselves, who only has a small window into what the company's doing overall. They need to expand the conversation to line of business managers and people in other parts of the organization, because well over 65% of the technology spend is now occurring outside of IT. So I do encourage them to, go outside that traditional buyer and find out, what is really needed to help that business excel. And chances are they may be looking for a reduction in some of those traditional telco solutions, but they're going to turn around and spend that money on something else in the IT space. So that's the first thing I would do.
I got a quick follow-up, Nancy, and then I have a question for Chris regarding the product changing process and saving money that way. But we're seeing more and more positions that can turn into buyers, right? The chief information security officer has become much more prominent in the last 5 years. We're seeing, sometimes in the old days, it was just the finance person signing off on a bill reduction. Are you seeing, you said you see decision makers shifting away from traditional areas. Where are you seeing those decision makers happening? And is it just one decision maker? I think for me, on the service provider side, especially when we go up market, we see multiple decision makers. And really, you have to get buy-in across the board to get a decision made. And it's taking a lot longer than it has in the past.
Yes, definitely. I would say certainly the chief information officer, anyone who is looking at the digital strategy for the company is really important. That person can also be a chief marketing officer. So, we know that there's a tremendous amount of spend happening there because, look, they're trying to reimagine their businesses and address customer experience as quickly as possible right now. So they're looking at perhaps going to e-commerce solutions or marketplaces or all of these new ways that business is being done. So they have to make decisions quickly in order to survive. So you better go to them. It might even be HR, by the way.
Sure.
So lots of different folks that are making these choices.
Chris, technology has driven write-downs. I know in our business, we acquired a company 5 or 6 years ago now called Line Systems that was very heavily in the POTS line business. And as POTS lines convert to SIP, and I saw a report, I think it was Atlantic ACM, talked about how the industry growth in telecom is slow or it's actually declining a little bit because even though we're selling more as an industry, the products cost more. The older products cost more than the newer products. So as you're trying to help partners minimize write-downs and minimize losing revenue, how do you do that when an SD-WAN solution might cost less than an MPLS solution did, or a full UCaaS solution might cost less than the traditional voice PRI solution? How do you do that? How do you coach them through that?
It's interesting that you phrased that question exactly that way. Starting about last year, beginning of 2019, actually, in our Ultimate Partner Training events that I design and design the curriculum for and run, and you guys have been, Telesystem has been a big part of. My first opening slide question to the entire class is, where are your opportunities coming from in 2019? And the whole vein was, it was educating about going wider, okay? If you can come in on that SD-WAN, yes, no one's getting rich selling SD-WAN unless you sell your software to a company like VMware or Oracle or something. That's who's getting rich. But yes, the products and solutions cost less. But that, that allows the partner to go in and go wider into that organization, because now you've got all these other business tools that are now available in a consumption-based model or as a service model. Whereas before, the partner typically only had, PRIs and bandwidth to be able to sell to that customer. So now you can go wider. You can go into remote desktop solutions. You can go into CCaaS, UCaaS, cloud, drones as a service are available. I mean, you really can go wide. And as you do that, you can create a roadmap for your customer. And therefore, that's a sticky business because you've created that roadmap. You're helping them get their business where they want to go. And each one of those solutions is going to add up to a tremendously more sum than that MPLS network or that bandwidth or that POTS lines PRI. So the key is you got to go wider.
when you're creating the roadmap, chances are you're going to be able to stay along and help them execute that roadmap.
Absolutely. That's what you want.
Micah, before we go into the who, do we have any questions out there from Question Land?
Yes, we do. We have one from Martin Villaboy. Are there particular services selling well now that are bigger candidates for being written down in the near future?
Oh, that's a great question.
Who wants to take that one on?
Yeah, I guess I would start. I start with Randy, because I think I want to hear this from the channel before I attack it from the service provider side of things. Randy, do you have an answer?
Yeah,
for that?
obviously, the obvious question. I mean, the obvious answer to start off with is bandwidth, because of the price compression. But we also, another thing that COVID has created is we're going to start seeing, more than likely, where as businesses start coming back, they're going to come back in a different capacity. And so I think we're going to see a seismic shift in, and I'm not going to take credit for this quote because I heard it from someone else, but instead of managing locations, it's going to go to managing people, because people are there. The workforce is going to be largely remote for the most part, even when things get back to normal. So being able to enable a remote workforce, is going to drive less services at a particular location. Doesn't mean the IT spend is going to be shifted. It doesn't mean it's going to go away. It's just going to be shifted from everything it takes to manage a location to everything it's going to take to manage the location and the remote workforce. So thinking about it in those terms, that's we're going to see a lot of price compression there, where companies don't need as many services and as many things at a particular location as they had in the past.
And bandwidth is definitely something that, I mean, we all see as 5G comes along and bandwidth becomes increasingly available in gobs, pricing will almost go down. And I've seen strategies, I've talked to my peers where they're almost giving it away to get the other stuff. And I think we'll keep seeing that. The other thing, and I won't force any of you to answer it because you might be partnered with some of these organizations. But the other thing that I'm starting to see is UCaaS not just becoming a commodity, but I see big companies that are, CRM platforms or video conferencing platforms. They're almost giving away the UCaaS to get the other substance of the platform. They just want everybody to be all in on what they're doing. Without naming any names or attacking, I think that, buyer beware in some of these instances, because some of that it's not the expertise of those particular companies. And we've all seen bad situations when somebody jumps into a pool that they're not native to, and it can create a very bad experience. Part of what we do is Telesystem. We're not necessarily out there creating our own software, but we're putting together best of breed solutions using what's out there. And we're using big brands like Cisco and Microsoft and others to do it. But I think that you're seeing this whetting of the appetite, giving away a year or two of UCaaS to try to get the other business for some of these software programs. And do you think that's dangerous for the customer? And I asked Chris specifically because he's more engineering minded, I think, on the panel. Is that dangerous? Do you recommend that somebody go to their CRM provider and buy UCaaS from that provider?
No, not at all. I think the scariest entity in all of this, I call him Uncle Google. Because if you're going to you can go to Uncle Google or Aunt Google, and look up something. And 99% of the time, the information you're going to get is coming from a marketing department, and it's not accurate. And that is misleading, and then that confuses people. You really want to go and you don't need, as a partner, you don't need to understand the technology. As a consumer, you don't need to necessarily understand the technology, but you have to use resources that understand who's doing what well and who is focused on X. Somebody that says, look, this is what we do well. That's it. Not you know, and I'm trying to leave names out of it because I could really fall into that trap. And you really want to make sure that who you're buying your services from is a focus of that company. What is that company's core business? It may not be this other stuff, you know, that they want to package in, and it sounds nice, and it's a big reputable company, big reputable name, but that's not one of their specialties.
Sure. Got it. Well, let's talk about the who. So we've talked about why we want to sell managed solutions, and if I get my mouse right, here we go. Who are we selling managed solutions to? To me, the managed solution customer it fits a certain profile. So you have customers that have very large IT staffs that really want self-control over everything they do, and they just want to buy it, give it to us, and go away. And then you have very small customers that they don't need a whole lot. You know, they might just need voice and data and some type of cybersecurity to protect themselves. Managed solutions are right in the middle. The IT staff's big enough to want it, but they're not big enough to want to do it all on their own. So Nancy, when you're out there and you're talking to customers, what's the customer profile where you see managed solutions being a big play?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, that has been shifting, although I will say that still that smaller enterprise, mid-market to smaller enterprise is a real sweet spot. And especially with the verticals and the type of businesses, because these IT folks are dealing with more challenges than they ever have before. I mean, I've said this in recently in other forums, but I really think that the IT managers are kind of the unsung heroes of COVID. You know, we've honored all the frontline workers in healthcare and all that sort of thing, but what about the guys that kept us all up and running, you know, through this whole situation? And at this point, you know, they're kind of relying on heroics to keep going. You know, some of them are working day and night, you know, as I deal with some of those folks. And frankly, they don't have the energy or the time to get trained up or learn the new things that they need to know relative to security. You know, they went overnight with work from home with entire workforces. And, you know, I know that concerns about security, because we've seen cybersecurity attacks really just go through the roof during this time frame and get a lot more creative as well. That I am seeing some more IT leaders embracing the idea of managed services, and especially if they have, you know, a limited staff. And that's where I think those mid-market companies are really excellent candidates for this. By the same token, I think you can also look at, you know, some of the larger organizations are willing to go to managed services as well in certain areas, because they want to keep their true IT leaders and the folks that are innovators within their organizations, helping them make the pivot and transition for what they need to do as a business to survive. On the smaller side, I'm working with a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur, and they're all of a sudden embracing the idea of managed services 100% because they're trying to survive. You know, the small businesses are trying to survive. So I think really across the spectrum, you've got opportunities for managed service. It's just finding the folks who will be the most open to having that conversation now. And I like all the things in the slide here too, because it reminds us, you know, to pay attention to all of those question marks. You know, do you really have the expertise, for example, to address the security piece? Do you want to spend money on hardware right now? Or, you know, is your company looking to make that transition to the cloud, which so many are? Managed services makes that a whole lot easier.
Sure. Well, and the support component of it, you know, paying for support and maintenance. That's sometimes when people are buying hardware, that's an afterthought, and it can't be an afterthought when you're going and you're buying it yourself. Chris, I have a question for you, and then Randy, a more specific question for you based on an experience we've had together. But Chris, I coach my salespeople all the time to really value their time. And don't just chase after everything, because if you add up all of the money that you make and all of the hours in your day, and you're chasing down things that are not productive, you can really lower your hourly wage significantly. I read in a book, I think it was Jeb Blunt, Fanatical Prospecting. That's a nice plug for him. Don't be your own plumber if plumbing isn't your specialty, because think about what you would pay a plumber and then add up all the time and money that you're wasting based on what your value is to try to fix that plumbing problem yourself if you're not very good at it. But tell me, what's the ideal, when you think about staff, the IT staff, what size customer, what size staff should somebody go after for managed solutions? And when would you say, listen, stay away, too small, too big, doesn't fit, you're going to waste your time?
I wish I could answer that question with an easy bullet, but I don't have one. I think in when it comes to managed services, there are some parameters, and Nancy identified them very, very well. You really want to ask the questions about, the complexity of the business, understand the business. If the business has, say, 20 locations, how many people are in your IT staff? Typically 2, maybe 3. Now, we know that they're already, overburdened, right? Now, put all this change on them. Take all the people and send them home. Now they're managing remote VPNs from, 220 people. That just exponentiated their workload. They don't have time to learn anything new. They don't have time. They just can't do it. They're just overburdened. So you can almost assume that they're overburdened just based on understanding what do you look like physically, and how many are in your IT staff. And then you want to really go down. If you're going to talk about selling a managed solution, you're talking about selling, yes, there's technology. And technology is going to do whatever it's going to do, whichever technology we're talking about. But managed services, managed solution, and your plumber analogy is perfect. That's a business conversation. It is understanding, what's the opportunity cost of trying to do this yourself versus getting a fixed monthly cost to have the expertise brought in and managed for you. And then your staff can focus on what they're doing. Your IT leaders can focus on new initiatives so you can make more money, expand, whatever the business goals are over the next 18, 24 months. I think that's where the conversation has to start. One of my biggest frustrations, I'll tell you, there's a lot of partners who never ask, do you want a managed service? They don't come out and ask and go down the road of managed service. They go down the road of SD-WAN, or they'll go down the road of UCaaS. And when we do a lot of education about technology and all the great things it can do, but never along the time do they say, do you want a managed service, or do you want to do this yourself? Whatever that answer is, you pivot on.
I think it's asking that, but I've also seen where they're asking, but they're asking the wrong person. And yes. I want to ask you this, and anybody feel free to jump in on this one, but I've seen lots and lots of times where the agent gets a relationship with the customer, and they tell my channel manager or my salesperson, hey, all you have to do is fly out. This is a done deal, $45,000 a month. They're going to buy everything. And, they want executive presence. So I'm slugging along as well. And we get there and we're sitting in a broom closet with a desktop administrator. And no offense to desktop administrators, but they're usually not the decision maker for enterprise organizations. What happens when you see that scenario? Do you sniff it out? Do you say no? Or how do you politely shift the partner to ask some more tough questions?
Good question. How do you shift them? I think to be successful takes a fair amount of business acumen going forward. Is understanding how businesses operate, understanding where the line is between strategic thinker and task doer, and understanding you got to understand you're talking to the right person. Because again, when we're talking managed services, we're talking about It's almost a philosophy, and in one of my sessions in my training class was the whole as a service movement. And there's a lot, once people start, they start looking at that for all the service in their business because it becomes a culture. And to your point, nothing against the people that keep the lights on, right? And keep the desktops running and replace the keyboards if there's anybody back in an office. But they're not necessarily having those just strategic conversations. And worse yet, may feel threatened if you go down that road with them. So it's understanding, talking to the right, it's a strategic conversation.
Yep.
And I think it also has a lot to do with it's understanding the opportunity. And you can get to that point by doing a much deeper dive on the discovery side. And when you start going deeper on the discovery, and I know with Chris's team and Nancy does a phenomenal job of this herself, is being brought in the front end and handling that discovery end or being part of that discovery. Not only will identify if you're talking to the wrong person or others need to be brought in, but also identify more of the overall opportunity. It may start off as one thing and turn into something completely different because one piece of it is driving the overall solution. And if they can't answer that part of it, of the why are you looking to, something as simple as why are you looking to go from whatever you have to a gig of bandwidth? What's driving that? It's not to let your employees surf the internet faster. There's a transformation going on. There's something going on that's driving it. And so being able to help identify that on the front end, it makes sure you not only have the right people in the room, but also having the right discussions, but be able to identify the overall solution itself.
And can I just add to that really quickly that
Absolutely.
this group of people that are here on this call, you folks are all part of the ecosystem, that we call the channel today. And it's really critical because I just had an experience talking to a C-level, a chief transformation officer. Yes, there is a CXO out there now for a very large enterprise company. And we were beginning the conversation about a key workload migration off of a hardware that's being discontinued. And as we had the discussion, he started sharing how, I started asking questions about their environment and how they were adapting, and come to find out that, like many enterprises, believe it or not, they didn't have a very aggressive cloud transformation strategy. They really hadn't brought a lot into the cloud yet, but now they're looking to do that. And so drawing back on that ecosystem, this is where we can go to trusted partners, whether it's the master agent folks like Chris, who are bringing, these great technical resources to us, or, organizations, Bruce, like yours, where you have people on staff that can assist, that the art of account mapping is really important nowadays because we can help our clients get to the big picture of, really what across the board do they need to be looking at, because so many of those solutions depend on each other to really work well. And managed services is such a huge part of that because it's going to touch something. So
Great point. It's one conversation with different silos of solutions, right? Everything's intertwined. We are truly in the ubiquitous network now.
Yeah, and I want to get to a question that we have in just a second, but I want to ask, and it's very specific to that, and we didn't even rehearse it that way, but I have a salesperson, a very good salesperson. He's been with us for a long time, and he sells mostly enterprise, and he's always coaching agents not to quote unquote job things out. Don't look for the lowest price on everything and then try to slap it together. It doesn't work for a hospital. It doesn't work for a bank. And Randy, you came to us to Telesystem, and again, not a Telesystem commercial, but you came to us with a large opportunity, $100,000 plus biller. And originally this customer wanted to get the lowest price on a variety of products, inbound toll-free. They were doing wide area networking, a lot of dialer minutes. There was a lot of components to this project. SD-WAN was in their future. They had an MPLS network. And you said to them, look at Telesystem, because you can't do all these things alone. You could, but it's not going to work as well as if you had one source that's really managing all of this, and especially when you put the project together. When do you decide whether or not to quote unquote job it out and really just go the price play, and when it really needs a big picture thinker to put it all together?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying: is going in and being able to identify the overall opportunity. I'm lucky enough to have some smart people around me that do the smart stuff and do the heavy lifting on the smart stuff. And this opportunity came from actually a relatively new partner for us that had this relationship. They approached us as a SIP opportunity and some toll-free traffic, and it was, how much money can you save to do these different things. And our sales engineering team got involved, and they quickly uncovered the more complete and the more overall solution. And we started adding the different components together and who could manage it the best from our solutions portfolio. And you guys, our Telesystem immediately came to mind because of your ability to do all the different facets and do it all through one entity was huge, and that's what made the difference. And it went from a $10,000 to $12,000 a month deal, which would have been a good deal, but it's well over 6 figures now, and will continue to grow. And that's a testament to, again, looking at what the overall opportunity was, and our value as a master agency is to help narrow the focus, to be able to deliver. This is what we recommend, and here's why. And but the earlier you get in on those opportunities from the discovery end is where you're going to win.
Follow up to that, and I'll ask it to Nancy because we talked about it. I don't know if it was in preparation for this or with something else, but a lot of times with large opportunities, and you're really doing your homework and you're understanding the scope of the opportunity, sometimes it's about striking quick and just getting your foot in the door and becoming an approved vendor. And sometimes partners will try to do the big picture and put it all together, and then they have it all tightly wrapped up in a bow, deliver it, and then all of a sudden it exceeds a spending limit, or they're approved for this and not for that, and everything falls apart. Talk about that process of just getting your foot in the door and becoming an approved vendor, and then you have that map to sell anything that you want.
Well, I think what's important is we have to find ways to continue these conversations. I've experienced that myself. I think that's a real trend that's happening right now because of COVID. I can't tell you how many partners I've spoken with who had large-scale projects that were on the books for 2020, and they got pushed out. And those big projects aren't happening anymore, and they had it all, as you said, wrapped up and ready to go. And now it's back to, let's continue to have the conversations. How can we take a deeper dive into what has changed in terms of the customer environment? How can we address those changes now more effectively? And that doesn't mean that the pre-approved vendor has to be let go. You don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater, but you can certainly, go back and learn and find out, what is what's the cause and what's behind the delay, what's behind the customer putting this on the back burner, and how can you impact that? And I think it may come down to economic issues, but a lot of times I think it's also coming down right now to just confusion, on the customer side. They're trying to make the right decisions, and they're getting a little bit nervous about it. And more than ever, it's important for us as trusted advisors to understand the customer perspective. One of the things I've been doing is asking, what are they reading? Where are they going to get their information? And that's really critical because so many of these decisions are being made through non-traditional channels. There's a lot of influencers out there nowadays. They're going to their affiliate groups, they're talking to peers. And it's important to stay tuned in to, what kind of information they're receiving so that, we can come back with those approved vendors perhaps and, reposition the conversation once again. But I think keeping it going is the main key.
So we talked a lot about number 2, the bullet point number 2 here. I want to mesh 1 and 3 and deliver this question to Chris, because I know it's something that we've talked about a lot. There are a lot of agents out there that, they're enamored with a product, whether it's UCaaS or SD-WAN is a big one right now. And they jump into a customer and say, I want to sell you SD-WAN, or I want to sell you UCaaS. And they have no idea what that customer's environment looks like or whether or not that's a fit. And they have that basic conversation. The customer says, yeah, I'll look at it, something like that. They get a bill, and then they immediately go to 5 different providers and put together a spreadsheet that shows the lowest cost, and then they deliver it, and it's a done deal at that point. And then everything falls apart. How do you coach an agent past that? So when they come to you and they say, all right, I need MIcrocorp to get me the best 5 providers for SD-WAN and SIP trunking because I got these guys on the hook.
I love that question because my answer is always the same. I can't. Every situation is subtly different. So, and it's funny because you put it just that way. This reminds me of my old CLEC days when I had sales reps say, oh, I'm a customer interested in X, right? What do I ask them? And so my response is always the same, and my response to your question would be the same. And from my position, it's, what's their contact information? When are they available to talk?
Right.
Let's just get a conversation going. Because, we can't sell an it. None of these are its. And if we go back to its, commodities, if we turn UCaaS into a commodity, right? It's a race to zero. Nobody wins. Partners don't make money. Companies don't make money. Nobody makes money. Nobody wins. And also we have to solve business problems. And that's where it's critical for that. So what I try to do is I try to coach that partner to let's go in and have a business conversation. Let's have a large conversation, a deep dive into what they're doing. My favorite 2 questions to open a conversation are, where are your applications today and where are they going to be in 18 months? Because from my perspective, that tells me a tremendous amount of what is going on in that organization. Whether it doesn't matter, it could touch cloud, it could be UCaaS, it could be CCaaS, it could be SD-WAN, it could be anything. But what it also tells me is that there's a lot of change. So what I try to do is coach the partners to open up that conversation, understand their business, forget the technologies, because we're going to turn around and we're going to find the technologies and map them to the business problem and solve that problem. And therefore, it's not a matter of who's least. It's a business cost, right? It's not a cost. We're using technology now to drive revenue in different areas. So again, I say I can't. I just say I can't. They're just give me 30 minutes with them to ask some questions. And my goal in that is to Nancy's point, expand the conversation beyond that. It's not that I need 30 minutes to get what we need. We're going to take that and see where we go from there.
Well, and sometimes it's not even what's on the bill, it's what's not on the bill. Because what the missing piece could be is that they're going to a brand new accounting system that needs a certain amount of bandwidth, and it has nothing to do with what they're being billed for today.
It's funny. I've been asked hundreds of times in my career, do you want to see a bill? My answer has always been no. Right. I don't care what's on the bill. I care what is in the company. I know what's on the bill. There's going to be some internet. There's going to be some voice. There's going to be maybe some hosted PBX, whatever it may be. Let's talk to the business and find out what they're doing and how we can help them.
And that's why I think some customers look at telecom as, like the car sales game. They think that because we're asking for bills, it means that, the price is going to be based on what they're paying now. And It shouldn't be that way. And I think the industry is evolving. It really is evolving.
That's very 2006.
Yeah. Micah, let's get to some questions before we run out of time here. I see a few in the queue.
Yeah, there's a couple here. So the first one here, it says, with estimates that about 20% of enterprise workforces could remain remote in 2021, how do you and what type of managed solution specifically addresses challenges of IT staff who now must support hybrid workforces?
Yeah, and I think Nancy opened up by talking about that. So I know you're very passionate, and you and I talk about your conversations with businesses all the time. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, one of the things I think we need to look at in this work from home environment, and I know you're trying to stay off the commercial round, Bruce, but I also know that your company is moving into this area, which is, being able to put a device that will allow for a security, have a security view and a dashboard to take that management down to the home level beyond the VPN
Sure.
to the end user in the remote home. I think that's a big deal right now that many IT managers are struggling with and organizations are seeking to discover. And it's not going to change because, we've got kids still doing school at home and all kinds of demands and crazy things that are happening with the network. Everybody's, all these Alexa devices, and these are all gateways to the bad guys. And so I think that is one of the big ones,
Yeah,
personally.
and I'll take that opportunity, not to give a commercial, but I think one of the things that really we started our real national channel construction in 2017, and we started that because people were very, very interested in our DDoS product. So we started, we got into the channel, the master agent channel, with our DDoS mitigation strategy, which was at all of our internet entry points in the country, we have DDoS mitigation systems. So all of the traffic is scrubbed actively as it's coming into our network. And that won us a lot of business in the school district arena. So now it's kind of funny because as students are going home and workers are going home, now to try to again come up with something unique that not everybody's doing. You really have to stay away from Me Too as a service provider because that does commoditize almost everything. We're looking at it and saying, okay, let's go down to the desktop and put a piece of software on the desktop that when a student gets an email or a file and they don't know any better than to open it, or you have the receptionist that's now taking calls from home and they're not connected to the network and they're not connected to the main firewall, they open something up. We have to be able to sandbox that, and I think that's where Telesystem is very strong. It's putting together the whole solution, understanding the business. We're not creating or inventing anything. And we're not just a billing aggregator. We're going to manage it and take the complexity out of the hands of the customer. The customer wants to manage it. That's not us. If the customer maybe just wants one particular product, we can do it, but that's not where I'd say we fit. We fit multi-product, multi-location. That's where we're very strong. And we're not always the least cost provider because we do invest a lot in that back office and putting things together and making sure that it works. That's the key part.
Bruce, can I paint a quick picture? Do we have a second of a real life opportunity that we're working with right now?
Absolutely.
That addresses exactly that question. Customer had a contract up from MPLS, right? Was looking at moving to SD-WAN. So I had a conversation with him and we talked about, now they have 65 contact center agents that have to go home. They've got an on-prem PBX. They got it working after months. Okay, great. Fair enough. That's not on the table. However, for the partner, that's going to be on the table at some point. So there's a UCaaS opportunity in the future. The week later that we had a follow-up conversation, it broke. And now all of a sudden CCaaS, a cloud-based UCaaS and CCaaS solution, which facilitates that home agent much better than VPNing back into a data center and managing that whole debacle. Now that became forefront of the opportunity, and having a manager, and you guys are involved in the opportunity, and you guys are a great fit for that. for all those pieces. So now it goes from, just this one opportunity, which was okay, MPLS, kind of old school, right? Opportunity, MPLS, I'm going to change it to SD-WAN. Well, now we're talking cloud-based UC and contact center, along with circuits and along with SD-WAN, and provided all by Telesystem as a managed service.
Right.
So,
and the other thing I've got to add to that, Chris, that's so awesome is, in addition to solving that problem that the customer had, you can also solve another problem. Going back to the original question about that 20% at home, a lot of folks are concerned about workforce management.
Yep.
What are those people doing at home? Well, if you get a really great CCAS system or UCAS system, you have visibility into that, and you can create structures that will allow you to keep your employees happy, give them some nice parameters with which to work in so that they're feeling comfortable, and boost their productivity. And that's a huge win for companies too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have an awesome audience. I think the numbers have surpassed our expectations. So thank you to everybody that joined. We're right about 3 minutes to the top of the hour. Gerald, just timing on your side, we have a flood of questions that just came in. Do we have the extra few minutes to take these questions?
Go for it. Yeah, plenty of time here.
All right, Micah, fire away. Question number 3.
So this one is a big one. So what are the main components of a fully managed service solution for a fictitious customer with 4 locations, 20 people per location, with desktops and laptops for road warriors? With a home remote capabilities too, a file application server in each location, email, file sharing, Office 365 capabilities, and 3 specialized software applications, say QuickBooks, Basecamp, or Zendesk. In addition to that question, so in addition to managed connectivity, managed firewall, proactive network monitoring, security, and maintenance, what are the other managed components that such a customer might be sold if they simply said, I want you, MSP, to take over my IT operations? What is a fully loaded MSP solution by component heading? Whew.
I think that's a very long and very specific question.
Let me try to address that.
So yeah, Chris, go ahead. The engineer inside of you, but let's try to do it in like 90 seconds or something, so we don't alienate the other 3 questions.
Because it's a very specific ask without specific details. Okay, generally, I would say that if I'm a partner, this kind of opportunity, this is exactly what we're talking about, going wide. Okay, you can probably sell some mix of every piece of this. If you've got 4 locations, they're going to be connected, whether they're connected to each other or connected to the applications, whether in the cloud. That is a managed WAN service. You've got obviously a voice component here, which could probably be a UCaaS environment. It may work best. Whatever the applications are, where do they live? You said they were sitting in servers. They probably should move out to the cloud. That's an opportunity. This could be an opportunity of 4 or 5 different providers who specialize in different areas. But make no mistake, pretty much all of this is available to sell by a partner and agent today with the available as a service products. Who? That's a much more detailed discovery.
Right.
But absolutely.
I'd say we want that panelist to just reach out to the most comfortable person they feel on our panel, or all of us, and we'll guide you into.
I was just going to say, here's my email address. You want to set up a call, but no, but Chris nailed it. We all have solutions that can address all the areas, and having that type of discovery opportunity, or having that type of discovery to address that type of opportunity is what we all live for. And so
Yes.
We really appreciate. Yeah. That's a very detailed question that warrants.
ChannelVision will distribute that information at the end of the webinar, so you can get in touch with anybody or everybody. Micah, bring us home with the next couple questions.
Yes, so we have a couple more here. So This one here says, understanding that line of business executives are influencing purchase decisions, doesn't it still mostly start and end with IT because they are the only ones who are the detailed of how tech is applied? Approved vendors, digital transformations, plans, budgets, etc. Playing devil's advocate here.
So Nancy, I think what this question's trying to say is the influencer is important, may not be the decision maker, but ultimately could kill the deal if they decided that they really didn't want it. Is that you think that's what that person's trying to say?
Yes, and I think they're well, I'm not sure. I don't want to guess what they're trying to say, but what I take out from it is I do believe that IT does influence some of these decisions, but I can tell you that there's a lot of cases right now where they don't even get brought into the conversation.
Yeah, as I say, now more than ever, some decisions are being made because they have to be made without the buy-in of IT, and that's the reality of where we are. So, but yes, I mean it should have all the different caveats or all the different pieces making to enter into that decision. But the person that signs the checks and the person that pays the bills may overrule what an IT staff or IT person might be suggesting.
I like my channel managers, and you don't want to spend necessarily all this time when you're selling a $200 quick UCAS account. But when you're into multi-location selling and you're into not even just enterprise, but multi-location, multi-product sales, you want to identify your stakeholders and really map out how they're going to help you get to the finish line, because you may have to start with the desktop administrator, but know that that's not the person that's signing the contract, and don't pretend when you're delivering your forecast that the person is going to sign the contract, but use that person and really build a group of people in that organization that will make yes easier for the ultimate decision maker. Know that it can stop and it can end with the board approval process or that ultimate decision maker. But if you have enough people involved, then that creates that winning situation. That's at least how I coach it from a service provider standpoint. Micah, we have a couple more. Do we want to do one more question since we're over time here?
Yes. So this final question here, can the panel address a customer's fears about paying an MSP whose financials are not public and the risk that the MSP won't pay its upstream wholesale providers?
That's a really good question. I want to ask the three of you, but we get that all the time as a privately held company. Telesystem is part of Block Communications. We're a $1 billion plus entity that does a lot of things. And the sense that so we've been around, I think, for 107 years. It's something like that. The fear is always there, I think, for a privately held organization. And in telecom, we've all seen the worst case scenario. Even the companies that we thought were too big to fail at times. And they were public companies, some of them. So I don't think you can ever fully mitigate it. I think there's enough regulations in place to guide the customer to safety. The term MSP is always a little weird for me because some people can confuse a service provider. Like I call us a managed solutions provider, but we're not an MSP. MSPs are usually smaller regional organizations. And sometimes that may be a legitimate concern. They're just wholesaling different solutions. And if they do go belly up, you have to make sure that you're able to maybe have direct relationships with those vendors. That's how I would answer that question. I think you have to get to know the organization, you talk to references, and you get as deep into the financials as that private company will allow you to do. We will generally, for banks and hospitals, will provide a basic statement that shows them that we're not hurting for money, but we don't dive into the nitty gritty and give what a public company would. How does anybody on the panel that wants to jump in, how do you guide your agents and customers through that process?
I mean, you can address it a bunch of different ways. I mean, it's generally going to be a private company that's asking you as a private company to produce that, and they're probably a private company too. But I think it goes back to I don't know necessarily that you've overcome selling the why. They need to be doing business with you if they're coming back to doubting you're going to be in business. I don't know. I think there needs to be more done on the front end to earn that trust. And then, as you mentioned, Bruce, showing a contingency plan, worst case scenario, what would happen? This is what these would be your options to, if anything ever happened, these would be your options to get out of it or to choose a different route. But I think it goes back to you haven't done a good enough job on the sales side if you end up back at that point.
Yeah, and as a mom, I'll say, look at the company they keep, and that tells you, who they are, right? Who are they partnered with now? And what type of process did they have to go through to obtain those partnerships? Because if that MSP is representing certain larger entities, they may have put that MSP through some pretty stringent paces to get the ability to represent them, and who is using them now, and what's their longevity there. So I think looking at who that MSP is partnered with can also provide some comfort.
Chris, any final feedback there?
Typically, that's not a question that comes to my area. And frankly, it's not one that I've heard. But I think I thought your delineation between your typical MSP and the type of managed solution provider we're talking about. An MSP is going to manage an environment. They probably don't have assets. They're regional. They don't have relationships with large carriers and other provider organizations like somebody like Telesystem does. So I think that's really where it comes down to. We're not talking about a simple MSP. We're talking about an organization providing managed solutions that has assets, that has network, that has contracts with large organizations and a reputation.
Yeah. How long has the provider been in business? Who are they doing business with? When you're doing business with the tier ones, AT&T, Verizon, CenturyLink, there's usually financials that has to be submitted to even be part of that process. So I think there's a bunch of questions you can ask to make yourself and the customer feel more comfortable. So listen, we're 8 minutes over time. I think the really cool thing is that we didn't see any dip in the audience really after the 3 o'clock hour. So that means we did a good job of being entertaining and compelling. I want to say thank you to Randy Friedberg from CNSG and AppSmart Company, to Chris Donlin, my buddy at MIcrocorp, one of our longstanding partners. And we love the people at MIcrocorp, Karen Fields and Chris Schubert's over there now. You both know Chris Schubert very well. And Nancy Ridge from Ridge Innovative, one of the people who, I consider a mentor for myself. I go to Nancy with lots of questions that are on my heart. And from Telesystem, and I consider her a rising star, not just in Telesystem, but in the industry in general. She came to me 2 years ago and said, help me get on a path. And we kind of looked in her heart and saw what she was passionate about. And now she's out there everywhere. I see her face on my LinkedIn feed every time that I go in 5 or 6 times a day. Micah Rosales Peterson. Thanks everybody. Thanks everybody for joining us. Gerald, do you want to wrap it up and talk about where we can find the recording?
Sure, yes. Thank you for the fantastic presentation here. Just a reminder, to access this webinar on demand, please head over to channelvisionmag.com/webinars, and we'll also be in touch with a follow-up email with a link to the presentation. So thanks everyone, and we'll catch you next time. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.